Thank you so much for being on the call today, and I appreciate it. I'm Jason. I'm the Director of Business Development with Florida Best Quote Insurance. It's always a pleasure to be on with our VanDyk family. We appreciate your support and your partnership for all these years, and just love you guys so much. And but today we are going to go over, I think, a topic that's probably not as serious or earth-shattering as maybe some of the people have made it out to be. And hopefully today, just doing, basically highlighting the areas of the 4-point inspection that have updated and changed. You'll kind of see that it's just more detail. That's really all that it is. It puts more on the inspector to put a little bit of extra information. And so that'll be the main thing. But there are a couple of really, really key points that I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of. Not that there's a big change, but it's something that a lot of people don't know. And so we'll go over some of that today. But as you're probably aware, and you can see on the screen, this is the 4-point inspection that we've seen for years and years. Citizens hasn't updated it in a while. It's been, maybe 6 years or so, 5 years ago that they updated it. And now they're updating it again. And this is the standard form for the state. And so we always encourage home insurance or home inspectors to use this exact form. There's still a few inspection companies out there that, for whatever reason, still like their own design and everything. But if they leave anything out that's on here, regardless of how they want to design it or not, then it's not going to be acceptable to at least Citizens and potentially some other companies as well. If you see an inspection company that comes in with their own form and it doesn't look like this, we always highly encourage them. They are losing business by doing that because it makes it harder on us. We're not going to recommend companies that have their own form because we're used to this one. We can go through, we know exactly what to look for. And if it's kind of like looking at a brand new design, you've got to go line by line just to make sure everything's correct. So anyway, so on the 4-point, here's the first initial change. And to me, this is not a big change because we have been telling inspectors for the last couple of years, because Citizens itself required this photo. And that is here in the middle. You'll see they required the TPRV, that's the temperature pressure relief valve. They required a picture of this a couple of years ago. So we've been telling inspection companies, hey, just start including that picture. Well, now they have put it on the form, which means that the other home insurance companies are going to be looking for this. And it's just going to become a requirement across the board. So the inspection companies are pretty much doing this already. So it should not be a huge change that they're taking a specific picture of the temperature pressure relief valve. But this is good information for you. So when you get a 4-point inspection, we always look at the pictures. It's one of the first things we do, and we're always looking for that temperature pressure relief valve to be present. It looks like a little handle. Sometimes it's found on the top of the unit. A lot of times it's found on the side of the unit, but that's what that is.
And the reason that is so important, can you expand on that? Because we have it, like I know one or two appraisers that commonly will call for like a subject to item on that specific item.
Right. Well, you don't want to see any rust on it, but it's a safety issue. And it's got to have a pipe that runs off the side of it. I don't have a picture of it offhand, but because it's one of those things that it could blow up in a kid's face, right? If a little kid, that's one of the reasons that the drain pipe is there, to keep it from, blowing up in your face. So the title kind of gives it away. It's just a valve that releases the pressure, and the temperature can be hot. So temperature pressure relief valve.
Yeah.
It's just a safety item. All right. And then most of the changes are going to be in the details. So nothing has changed as far as the main part of the electrical system, but down in the supplemental information, this is where it gets interesting because they have added everything you see highlighted has been added. It was not on the original. And so you have single strand aluminum and multi-strand aluminum so that's going to be a main point, along with the cloth and cloth jacket rubber insulated. So these two things and these two things. So the main thing I would say, and again, nothing's really changed here, or nothing major has changed here, but people are just not aware of this. And so the key thing to remember here is that the kiss of death on electrical is single strand aluminum wiring. Okay. So single strand aluminum wiring just means that that's what you'll see in a electrical box. That's what you'll see in a lot of the outlets on older homes. And that's where they have to come along and use Alumicons, or Copaloon crimping is what they call it, where they can go in and they can basically make this safe. So aluminum wires, they didn't know this, but they discovered over time that aluminum wiring begins to expand, which causes it to loosen inside the electrical panel or inside the outlets, which can be a fire hazard. Okay, so single strand aluminum wiring is considered a fire hazard and it has to be remediated. And so that's what's, whenever we see aluminum wiring, whenever you've heard of aluminum wiring being a problem, it's always single strand aluminum wiring. So now they have called that out specifically on the 4 point. Multi-strand aluminum wiring is completely different. This is something, it's usually going to be 220 volts, and it's usually what you'll see going into an HVAC system, or even more commonly into a stove or range. And that, with the vast, vast majority of companies, that is completely fine. It's not going to be called out on a 4 point inspection at all. But with single strand, you're assuming that's got to be repaired. So in the past, they haven't separated it. They might just say aluminum wiring, but now they're calling out, they want the distinction made between single strand, which is bad and needs to be remediated, and multi-strand, which there's a few companies that don't like that, but the vast majority of companies are still fine with multi-strand aluminum, as long as it's to, like, major appliances, major systems such as the AC and the stove or range. Any questions about that? So they're just basically splitting those in half and pointing them out. All right. And then this is the other major change here, is the cloth wiring. We've always had a problem. I mean, there's always been an issue with cloth wiring. It's always been present in older homes, and it's always been called out. And insurance companies have always had an issue with it. Whoever had the idea of wrapping cloth around bare electrical wiring back in the day, somebody just wasn't thinking about that. But as you probably know, and I think this is a good thing that they've done this, right here, cloth jacket, rubber insulated. I don't know why this has become a thing again, or a new thing. What they basically have done is taken regular wiring that is coated in the rubber sheathing, and wrap that with cloth. And so it might look like cloth wiring, but it's actually fine. It's just got cloth wrapped around it. So these two things are very, very different. This is cloth over the wire itself. This is cloth over wiring that's completely sealed in rubber and is fine. The problem is that a lot of the company, this might not be cloth wiring, and there's a lot of companies that will take this, but then there's still some companies that don't like it. I'll tell you, give you one example. Tower Hill right now will not accept this, and that's a pretty major home insurance company out there. But we're trying to, I know Lindsay's been working to try to get some of our carriers that don't take this to change their policy on it. I think some of them just don't want to mess with it because you have to prove this. It looks like cloth wiring, but it's not. It's it's regular wiring with cloth around it. So, any questions about these two things or these two things?
So in an ideal world, not having an aluminum or cloth
Would be good.
would be
Yeah.
good. And copper's totally fine.
Yeah, copper's fine. Yeah, they've just called this. I think this is a good thing, actually. They're basically wanting to differentiate between single strand and multi-strand, which we've always done as insurance agents. We've known the difference between these two, that single strand is the problem, multi-strand 90-something% of the time is fine. And we've known that these two things are completely different. They've just not called them out on a 4 point before. So trying to educate people on the fact that this has always been the case, but they haven't called it out before. So this
So
is
the
actually a good thing.
so the cloth knob and tube is an issue. The cloth jacket, rubber insulated, is not an issue most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time this is fine, but there's still some home insurance companies that just don't like this. All right.
Okay.
Okay. And then down here on the HVAC, this used to be one question and they turned it into two. So they're asking, is there a wood burning stove or central gas fireplace present? And now they're wanting to know, was it professionally installed? So this used to not be there. This used to be just one question, and they basically just split it into two. Not a big deal. Um, I don't believe, unless your inspector looks at the wood burning stove or the central gas fireplace and goes, "Nope, Uncle Buck did this." That's where you're going to run into a problem. So they're basically just calling out and they're putting it in the hands of the inspector to say, yes, it was professionally installed. So this should rarely be an issue, but they've just expanded it on the 4 point. So not a huge issue, but at least just bringing it to your attention. Okay, this is the other major change on here. Under and really across the board, they're just basically in the supplemental information, they're just making things more detailed. They're not making any really major changes to the form itself. Like they're not making changes here in the middle. They're making changes here to the pipe in the supplemental information. So you'll see where I've highlighted. This is another thing. This used to be one section. Can y'all see? Is my pointer working? Are you seeing where I'm kind of
Yes.
pointing at?
Yep.
Okay, good. I didn't know. So this used to be one section here. Now, and this puts more on the inspector. They basically want to make a distinction between the pipes that are part of the supply system that are supplying water to the house and the pipes that are draining water from the house. This used to just be age of piping. This is what this was before this new form. Now they're calling out these two things. So again, that just puts a little bit more work on the inspector to make a differentiation between those two things.
I mean, who on earth changes their water piping to their house?
Say that again.
I said, who changes their water piping to their house?
Well, unless the house has been replumbed, nobody, right? I mean,
Okay.
however the house is how it is. Um, so yeah, they're making just differentiation. I don't know. We've always looked at it as if the supply system or the drain system has, like cast iron or galvanized, which can be problems. If either of these have them, it can be an issue. They're wanting to distinguish it. I'm not sure why. I mean, it's just making it more detailed. Again, it's going to have the inspector do a little bit of extra work. He's having to differentiate between the pipes that are part of each of these two systems. Um, this is another thing here that I'm glad they put it on here. We've always said it's required, but they just haven't listed it where you have to put the age of the water heater on the form with the year and if there have been any renovations to it. In other words, it hasn't been replaced, but maybe the pipes on the top have been redone, been replaced, but the unit is original. This is where you would write comments in on that. They
How
would
old
make
can a hot
comments.
water heater be?
15, once it hits 15, you have very few options. And most plumbers will say, depending on which one you talk to, some will say the average useful life is 10 to 12 or 12 to 15. Some just say 10 to 15 years. Um, but the majority of companies, if it hits the 15-year mark, they're not going to accept it. I do want to just, I've given this website before, but if anybody wants to write this down, there's a great website where and I encourage when I teach classes on to listing agents um, about some things they need to look for when they first go into a home on their listing appointment. One thing is go to your water heater and find out how old it is because you can tell your client if that's going to be something they need to replace before they list the home. Um, but a lot of times the manufacturing date's there. A lot of time it's embedded in the serial number. And if it's embedded in the serial number, you can go to the following website building-center.org. Go there, All you have to do is put the brand of water heater in, and it will pull up a example serial number, and it'll tell you where in the serial number the year is. Do not assume it's the first two numbers because very often it is not. That's a mistake a lot of people make. Sometimes it's the third and fourth number. Sometimes it's a code that the letter at the beginning of the serial number tells you what year it is. And there's a chart. Some companies have like a chart. Here's how you determine it. This letter means this, and this. So go to the website. I would encourage everyone to do this, along with getting a pre-listing inspection. We've been really pushing those. Get a 4 point at the minimum and a full inspection before you list the home, and then you can encourage the sellers to make repairs before you list it. It's a lot simpler to do that if you can get them to do it than finding out what the issues are under contract and have deals fall apart. So one of the little things I encourage realtors to do when they go into homes, along with going to the electrical panel and seeing what the brand is go to the water heater, see what the age is. If it doesn't say manufacturing date on the plate, look it up through the website, building-center.org, and it makes you more valuable to your client. You can say this thing is however many years old, you're going to need to replace it.
Do you think that so Matt is who I get quotes from, Matt Henshaw. Do
Yeah.
you think that he would make mention that, hey, by the way, this hot water heater's, 14 years old, and that excludes like our top three homeowners insurance companies, which are less expensive, than the one that he's giving to us? Do you think they would most likely mention that to us?
Yeah, we're gonna come back with like our system's gonna come back with all the options, right? And if
Okay.
the top two or three, because we have a quoting system software that quotes all of our companies, right? So if the two or three best options will not take a water heater past 12 years old or 10 years old, then that would be communicated. That would be for sure be communicated.
Okay, because
Um,
that's great, as opposed to, just sending out, oh, here are the best options for the way the home sits right now.
Yeah, and normally, and I can't speak for Matt, but what the way we've trained our agents and really encouraged them to do is they're just looking for the age 15. If they see anything under 15, the vast majority of companies are going to be fine. If their top option, like easily the less expensive option, is not going to take one past 10, then they should call that out.
Okay, all right.
And then
Thank
that
you.
would be up to the buyer. You could still maybe what would probably happen because you're going to be under contract is go ahead and go with maybe a different company that's a little bit more expensive, and then maybe change up afterwards.
Yep,
If once they've replaced it, if you want to do it that way,
got.
because they would always have the option to replace it after closing.
Thank you.
And then real quickly, they just added cast iron and ABS, and maybe somebody, I'm drawing a huge blank on ABS this morning. I can't remember what ABS stands for, but they're calling out cast iron ABS. This is probably the big issue here is PEX has been listed in the past, but PEX has always been, there's a lot of companies that don't like PEX. It's been known over the years to get little pinpricks in it and cause leaks. And so some companies just don't like PEX.
ABS says
Uh,
it stands for, it's a type of plastic pipe made from acrylonitrile, butadiene, styrene,
yeah,
a
that's probably why I've
thermoplastic
never.
Polymer.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad I didn't look it up. I forgot to look it up
All
this
right,
morning.
I gotta go back. I
Uh,
gotta go back to high school here. A
yeah, me too.
thermoplastic polymer known for its toughness and impact resistance.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
maybe that's yeah, we just learned some college words this morning. I think three of them there. I would just say, of course, cast iron, galvanized, these are always going to limit, big time limit. Both of these will. But here's the main thing. PEX, for whatever reason, a lot of electricians have started using a newer version of PEX. And so that's why they're asking when was it installed? Because if it's the newer packs, there's a lot of companies that will accept it. There are still some companies they don't want to see anything PEX related, whether it's the old PEX that had issues or the newer PEX that's supposed to be fine. They are just kind of, it's like a lot of the companies, they just are slow to make changes. Um, and so some of them still have not differentiated here. And so that's why they're making a differentiation. Citizens is fine. If it's the newer pecs, they'll take it. But a lot of companies are still going to have a problem with it. It's kind of like the same thing we talked about up here with the electrical. This cloth jacket, rubber insulated cloth wiring, it's fine, but because it's got cloth wrapped around it, some companies will not differentiate between these two. So it's kind of the same thing. We're trying to get them to, hey, the new PEX is fine. You know that, right? So for you to just say all PEX is not good, you need to update your systems. And so Citizens has gone ahead and changed their form to say you're installed. So, and let's see, the only other thing down here is on the roof. This is the last thing, and then we'll be done. Um, if there is an active sign of leaking for a roof, and this is primary roof, secondary roof. So this would be like the main roof. Secondary roof would be like the flat roof you'll see over patios. That's kind of where this kind of ends up. They just added this little phrase here. And so now if there's visible signs of leaks, they just want the inspector to explain what they're seeing. They just want more details. But the bottom line here, what's kind of funny is if it says yes, it's a problem anyway. So they're basically going to add to these additional comments. So those are the major changes. So again, I don't think there's anything major earth shattering here. I think it's just calling attention to some things we already knew as agents, mainly two things: the difference between single strand aluminum and multi-strand aluminum. Single strand is bad. Multi-strand is usually fine as long as it's to an AC unit, a stove, a major appliance such as a major system such as that. And then the difference between the cloth and the cloth sheathed wiring. Those are the main two things out of everything on this 4 point. Those are the two main updates that people would just, realtors and all of us would need to be aware of.
I was thinking
Okay.
maybe we could even have a home inspector on here in the near future, Jason, Gabriella, to maybe we could have this form and have them maybe give,
Yeah.
input on their end.
Yeah, how it impacts them because it's giving them more work. But some of these things they would have called out on their own anyway, like the single strand. Basically, they up here, they would have not even, if there was multi-strand aluminum wiring to a stove, they wouldn't even call that out. I mean, it just wouldn't even be mentioned because it's considered fine.
Okay.
Um,
So is there a way for the average real estate agent, when they're going in and viewing a house to do a listing, for them to be able to see like what type of wiring it is?
No, that this is something. Well, I mean, they might see cloth wiring up in the attic potentially, but
Okay.
these are things that you would have to take the faceplate off of the electrical panel, so they're not going to see any of this. This is going to be called out on a 4 point inspection,
So,
by the 4 point inspection.
so all the more reason to see if you can convince your seller to have a pre-listing, inspection
Exactly.
done.
The only
Yeah.
thing on the electrical panel you're looking for is looking for the brand and you're looking for colored breakers. Because if you see red, blue, or green, that's a Zinsco panel, that's a fire hazard. And if you see Zinsco, Sylvania, Federal Pacific, or Challenger, those four brands are all problems. So that's one of the things we tell realtors on their pre-listing inspection: go to the electrical panel, go to the water heater. You want the age of the water heater and you want the brand of the electrical panel. And if you know those two things, you can give your seller some good feedback on what they need to do. Change the electrical panel, change out the water heater based on those things we mentioned.
Awesome. Is there a site they can go to, website they can go to for the electrical panel, or do just most agents know which ones are bad and which ones are good? Because I wouldn't personally be able to remember all that.
Yeah, I mean, they can Google. There's not a specific website that I know
Okay.
of. I
Okay.
mean, I would just say that if you can just Zinsco, Sylvania, and Federal Pacific are all three considered fire hazards. Challenger is just an obsolete brand. You can't get parts for it. It's not going to burn your house down necessarily, but companies, the vast majority of companies just will not accept it. So, but it's not the fire hazard that the other three are. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
They asked what were the three again. I think somebody's writing it down. What are the three? Um,
Zinsco, 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 Federal Pacific, and Sylvania are the three fire hazard ones. Challenger, you want to remember that one too. It might not be a fire hazard, but the vast majority of companies will not take it. Challenger is the fourth. So those are the four brands you're looking for. Um, yeah, agents aren't going up in the attic. You mean in the summer when it's 120 degrees up there, y'all are not up there walking around? Goodness, that's pretty weak. I know the inspectors don't want to go up there, you know.
well, thank you for this wonderful info. We appreciate it. We will catch up with you in June. Or if you
Yeah,
need anything in the meantime, you can get a hold of Jason or anybody at For Our Best Quote. They're awesome resource and provider
thanks.
for us. So appreciate it. Thank you for the great service you give us.